Hello,
today
Beth.
we're
Welcome
down
to
on
sunny
the
Sydney.
House
Oh, thank
today.
you for having me.
Hi, I'm Paul Rushworth-Brown, host of History Bards, Down Under interviews in association with Meet the Author in the US. And I'm here with author Max Willi Fischer, who's written what sounds like an amazing book, Hobodoy Rising. And Max, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Paul. Appreciate it.
The setting of your book is actually the same setting as one of my all-time favorite movies, which was Gangs of New York. And so tell me about the title.
In Manhattan in the 1850s, for a young teen, a young boy who wasn't a boy anymore, but he wasn't a man yet either.
In the gritty streets of 1854 Manhattan's notorious Five Points district, a young orphan named Pencil struggles to survive among thieves, street gangs, and corrupt adults. But Pencil has something most have lost in the slums: empathy and an unshakable sense of justice. When betrayal leads to his imprisonment, he finds a second chance on an orphan train to Ohio. Life on the farm strengthens his body, but challenges his spirit under an abusive guardian, forcing Pencil to flee once again. In Cleveland, he learns the art of photography under a new mentor, where brushes with crime, death, and betrayal continue to test his faith in trust and justice.
By the way, the name of this character, I love it, Pencil. Tell us about Pencil.
Pencil is an orphan who's grown up on the streets of Manhattan in the Five Points district, one of the seedier parts of the city at that point. And he is the lieutenant of a group of street rats who are controlled by an older criminal. And he makes a life of picking pockets and performing various scams for his criminal overlord. But yet he's got a goodness about him, and he wants something more. But it's circumstances that take over that eventually lead to that something more. And within that, he has to learn to trust people, because one thing he has learned on the streets is not to trust people.
Yeah. Now, give some sort of idea of sort of like what was going on at the time in that part of the world.
New York in 1854 was largest city in the United States and the biggest port, similar to what it is today, on a slightly smaller scale. And there was a lot of tension within the city because of it's in the antebellum period. You've got the brewing of the Civil War going on, forthcoming within 5 to 6 years thereafter. And there are various elements in the city, obviously the criminal element out to make a profit, but there are others that are engaged in illegal slave trade, kidnapping of free blacks.
In One of Four, Travis Davis takes you on an unforgettable journey from the battle-scarred trenches of World War I to the solemn grounds of Arlington National Cemetery. Through the eyes of an unknown soldier, discovered by a young French girl and immortalized in his 100-year-old diary, this novel intertwines the harrowing experiences of the Western Front with a modern-day story of a father and son, estranged yet brought together by the soldier's legacy. As they retrace the soldier's final days, this poignant narrative reveals the unspeakable horrors of war, the enduring bonds of family, and the timeless pursuit of honor. One of Four is a compelling exploration of courage, sacrifice, and the healing power of remembrance.
So I assume that the immigration, people coming into the US, was quite high at the time.
Yeah, and at that point in time, a lot of the folks who immigrated were Irish, and the Irish were at the bottom of the totem pole
Right.
as far as opportunity would go. And many of these groups were made up of former Irish immigrants, and other groups had other immigrant factions in them, but the primary groups were made of Irish and homegrown Americans.
Yeah. And so what did Pencil actually was he involved with any of these groups or gangs?
I purposely didn't have him directly involved with the gangs because that was on my mind when the book started, but the more I researched, the more my plots begin to turn based on what I uncover.
Okay.
So when I uncovered the Blackbirds, I knew Pencil wasn't going to stay in New York.
A two-part historical novel by Julien Delamotte immerses readers in the turbulent period leading to the Norman conquest of England in 1066. The novel vividly portrays a kingdom in crisis following the death of King Edward the Confessor. Harold, the Earl of Wessex, is hastily crowned king but faces immediate threats from Viking and Norman invaders. With meticulous research, Senlac brings to life the battles and intricate politics of the era. This meticulously crafted work is poised to be a landmark in historical fiction, captivating fans with its authenticity and emotional depth.
Julien Delamotte was born in London. He graduated in medieval history and theology from the University of Wales and gained a postgraduate qualification in medieval art from the University of York. Charles Leclerc, nominated for the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, said, "Somehow Julien summons up an image of the Europe of 1,000 years ago, an account that feels real, not like fiction."
Darlene Adams is a free-spirited woman who is beautiful, can shoot, and she doesn't break her promise. Ruthlessly ditched after being in a relationship for 20 years, Darlene takes work on a remote cattle property. 2 years later, she's out of work but retains the Queensland title of pistol champion. Now her eyes are on the national titles held in Western Australia. En route, she learns about her missing niece and takes things into her own hands.
Okay, without sort of like I suppose giving any spoilers, I sort of like get the feeling that Pencil was sent to a family and he had a few issues there.
He and the 60-something farmer who ended up taking him didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things. Rural Ohio at the time, a big city orphan, there was a lot of prejudice against them just for being an orphan, let alone being an outsider.
Yeah.
He ends up, though, in Cleveland, which certainly didn't compare to New York in the scope of culture and population, but still it was a sizable city that had its own, how should we put it, rules of play. When I started the book, it was going to be simply about a youth growing up in the antebellum period in the 5 Points of New York, similar to what you might have seen in Gangs of New York. And I dug into old papers, copies of New York papers of the time. Eventually, I would dig into papers from Ohio of the time and books, online articles, and the information that I found, as I've mentioned earlier, basically is the roadmap for the plot of the book. And the twists and turns are often reflected by the twists and turns that I get in the research. When he gets to Ohio, he gets in the middle of an area where people are basically, if you will, pro-Southern. They want everything left as it is. Don't rock the boat. They hated abolitionists. Leave the South alone to its own institutions. And yet, throughout all that, he uncovers pockets of abolitionists.
Okay.
And that winds itself through the story as well. One thing I take pride in, and that I have as a goal, I don't know how a book's going to end, one of my books is going to end, until at least 2/3 of the way through. And I like it that way because if I don't know how it's going to end, the reader's not going to know how it's going to end.
Who's the novel written for?
It's written as a YA novel for teens, especially older teens. But feedback I've gotten in reviews on Amazon, there are quite a few adults that have read it and enjoy it as well.
Okay.
I try to gear the characters to a teen audience, but the setting and the story can be enjoyed by all.
Step into the rugged world of Plymouth, 1620, where Sarah, a courageous woman, embarks on an unforgiving journey in the New World. Amidst the treacherous unknown, she faces starvation, death, and the harsh realities of early colonial life. On the wings of the red-tailed hawk, masterfully weaves historical authenticity with an inspiring tale of resilience, as Sarah discovers her inner strength to survive against overwhelming odds. This award-winning novel, lauded for its evocative writing and powerful portrayal of women's triumphs in history, is a must-read for lovers of gripping historical fiction. Join Sarah on her harrowing yet empowering journey and witness the indomitable spirit that defines the true pioneers of America.
Bards Sing of Love and War is a captivating historical novel set in 11th century Wales, where love, honor, and ambition clash amidst the Norman invasion. As Chief Bard Rodri mentors young Tal, the tale unfolds familial and forbidden romance, centering on Greece's quest to reclaim his amidst King Henry I's campaigns and betrayals within King Gruffydd Sinan's court. A web of deception, secret marriages, and daring rescues promises to enchant fans of epic romance and adventure.
In the charming but secretive town of Wallingford Heights, 1893, 3 hairdressers and a seamstress are more than just masters of style, they're amateur sleuths. When a chilling triple murder rocks their sleepy Massachusetts town and a young suffragist is wrongfully accused, these 4 spirited women from the Vine Salon, one of America's first, must unravel a web of dark secrets. Using their keen ears for gossip and sharp minds, Estelle, Chastity, Mary Lou, and Clara dive into a thrilling mystery that intertwines the dangers of the past with the promise of a changing future.
I've seen on Amazon reviews, you've been getting some great reviews on it. What would adults find appealing about this novel that is mainly directed at young adults?
But the major conflicts, and there's always a conflict in my book that's based on the historical record, is pretty much true to the historical record.
Tell me about Pencil's, I suppose, personality. Okay, you said that deep down he's a good person. Tell me about his personality. What are his faults? What are his strengths, weaknesses?
When he's in trouble, he knows how to get out of it. He knows where to go to get things. He knows how to get them. His weakness is he may be a bit too soft, because in his cadre of younger fellows, of which he's the oldest, he's more like an older brother to them, and that gets him into trouble with his criminal overlord.
Did you already know how you were going to paint Pencil? His psyche, his thoughts, feelings?
Good question, Paul. I had a rough idea.
Yeah, okay. And then he just grew.
And I filled it in, especially within that first 2 chapters.
Yeah.
After the second chapter, I knew what the personality of Pencil was.
Okay. You mentioned before that you love sort of like reading old newspapers and that type of thing for your research, which is amazing. Um, when you were writing the novel, did you find anything or read anything in a newspaper that you went, "Whoa, I didn't know that"? That's anything that was pretty shocking about those times and that area.
The fact that there were basically corrupt police that were engaged in kidnapping blacks,
Yeah,
have them sold south, was one of those. And the hard felt resistance in parts of Ohio against the abolitionist movement.
what's the main message that your take home message you'd like the reader to take home?
Learn to trust, but to learn to trust, you must learn to discern, to be able to read the signals around you.
If this was to be turned into a movie, who would play the main character, Pencil?
Oh, good question. 20 years ago, Leonardo DiCaprio probably would do it. He's
Okay.
too old for it now.
Yeah. So Max, the reviews on Amazon are great. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being on the show. It's taken a bit of organization to get it going, between continents. But thank you so much for being on the show, and I wish you the very, very best with your novel.
Thank you very much, Paul. I really appreciate it.